LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the return of LiberalViewer. After 13 months, I've returned for at least a few Monday media mix-ups. I'll see how they go. I see a few people have joined me, which I appreciate. I'm going to be talking about a Supreme Court case. That's one of the reasons I came back, because, as a lawyer, I have some background in that subject, and I wanted to talk about whether Trump has lost the Supreme Court. As you can see in the title of the video, I don't think the Sunday morning news analysis programs really covered that, the Trump Supreme Court loss on the tariffs case very well, as I will explain to you using 8 of the best, most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. Of course, no Meet the Press. It was Sunday. There was no Meet the Press because of the Olympics. And this adding my commentary and criticism to the clip should create a very good fair use political analysis and media criticism program for you all. And I will start with and if you stay tuned all the way to the end, I will tell you a little bit more about my plans for future Monday Media Mix-Up live streams, and there'll also be a bonus Cheech and Chong the Kittens clip. They are still around and still extremely cute. But I always like to start with my political comedy. And for political comedy, the big baby reaction from Trump not getting exactly what he wanted from the Supreme Court. He held this press conference, and you'll see some clips of that coming up in the news summaries I'm going to show you. By the way, the summary of all 8 of the clips and some legal resources I'm going to share with you are down in the video description under sources. I also have summaries of all the clips, and I have links to where the legal resources are coming from. Like I said, I'm going to show you clips of Trump reacting like a big baby and attacking members of the Supreme Court that he appointed. But I saw this TruthSocial post he put up this morning here. I don't know how well you can read that, but I thought it was really funny. He starts off saying the Supreme Court, and he doesn't capitalize S or C, and he says, will be using lowercase letters for a while based on a complete lack of respect of the United States. Anyways, well, no, it's closed parentheses of the United States, not lack of respect of the United States. But yeah, that's Trump's big hit back at the Supreme Court, is that he's not going to capitalize the S and the C in Supreme Court anymore. You can read, I'm not going to read that whole TruthSocial tirade, but I did put a link down under sources if you want to go read it yourself. So I'm going to focus on the Supreme Court decision and how it was covered on the Sunday morning news analysis shows. And I'm going to show you the 4 news summaries from longest to shortest. Basically, the only one who did any real coverage in their news summary was ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Martha Raddatz was the anchor on Sunday, and Mary Bruce came and gave this 4.5-minute report. Martha Raddatz, Mary Bruce, on the Supreme Court decision over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. It was a major blow to President Trump's signature policy of sweeping tariffs and a rare rebuke from the Supreme Court. On Friday, in a stunning 6-3 ruling, the court overturned 70% of Trump's tariffs, which have upended the global economy and created uncertainty for businesses and consumers. The president, fuming and calling the decision a disgrace, has now turned to a provision in the law never before used by a president to declare a new across-the-board 15% tariff on all nations. But that only works temporarily. This comes just 2 days before the president delivers his State of the Union, with members of the Supreme Court presumably there in the front row. And it comes as our brand new ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll shows the American public largely critical of the Trump presidency. Trump's disapproval rating now stands at 60%, the highest of his second term, and the same as when he left office in the wake of January 6th. And majorities of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of key issues, including the economy, immigration, tariffs, and inflation. We will get to all of that, but we begin with our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, on the Supreme Court's bombshell decision.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
This week, the president's signature economic policy.
Thank God for tariffs.
My favorite word is tariff.
Tariff is the greatest thing that's happened to this country.
Dealt a staggering blow by the Supreme Court, declaring most of his sweeping tariffs illegal.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing,
leading to a presidential tirade in the White House briefing room, Trump attacking the justices who ruled against him.
They also are a, frankly, disgrace to our nation, those justices. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution.
The three liberal justices on the court were joined by the conservative Chief Justice John Roberts and two of Trump's own appointees, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett.
Do you regret nominating them?
I don't want to say whether or not I regret. I think their decision was terrible. I think it's an embarrassment to their families.
Trump had imposed tariffs by invoking emergency powers, but the high court found he exceeded his authority, saying only Congress has the power to impose taxes. Justice Gorsuch writing, most major decisions affecting the rights and responsibilities of the American people, including the duty to pay taxes and tariffs, are funneled through the legislative process for a reason. Some business owners who brought the case against the administration celebrating.
If I could pull a metaphor from the Olympics that we're all watching now, I imagine it's like winning a gold medal.
This week caught up with Maryland's Barton O'Brien last April as the tariffs pinched his pet supply business.
We have $150,000 worth of dog harnesses sitting in our factory right now. And with the current 145% tariff, I'm actually better off just lighting that on fire and taking the loss than I am trying to bring it into the country.
After the ruling, Barton telling us his relief was short-lived.
We all expected this. The tariffs were clearly illegal. But that didn't last very long because, within a matter of minutes, the administration said they're going to use other methods to put more tariffs on. We don't know what that's going to look like.
The president wasting no time doubling down, announcing he'll use other authorities to get around the court's decision and impose even more tariffs.
Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged.
Less than 24 hours later, the president upping those tariffs to 15%. But those can only stand for 150 days, with Congress required to approve any extension. That decision causing uncertainty across the globe as countries grapple with the new tariff landscape.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And prepare for what other tariffs Trump may issue in the future.
And our thanks to Mary. She will be back with us in just a moment. But we want to get straight to the Trump administration's U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer.
And I will have a clip of U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Jamieson Greer, just not from This Week with George Stephanopoulos. If you look down in the clip list in the video description, the final clip will be from Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan asking a question of Jamieson Greer. Now, that news summary there, like I said, it's the most extensive one. It was 4.5 minutes compared to a minute 40 seconds coming up. And they did give a lot of detail about, what happened and the results of the decision in terms of tariffs, how Trump is doubling down. They showed you a bunch of clips of Trump's rants against the Supreme Court. One thing they did say, though, is that it was a 6-3 decision, which, as far as it goes, is true. But what none of the news summaries really explained is that it was really a 3-3-3 decision. The 6 were split into 2 groups of 3 that agreed in the result that Trump didn't have the tariff power, but the liberal justices, they said it was because the statute didn't use the word tariff. So but the more conservative, the 3 conservative justices who ruled against Trump, they used this whole major questions doctrine, and I'm not going to go into the weeds on all of that, but I'm just going to say it shows that there's not like a united 6 justices who want to push back on Trump's power. There are various reasons why why Trump lost this case, but didn't necessarily lose his conservative Supreme Court. I'll talk about that more after some more of the clips, but I'm going to go to the Fox News Sunday news summary. I'm not showing the whole news summary. I'm just showing the part on the Supreme Court decision. This is Lucas Tomlinson, I believe, in front of the White House. He talked about how someone was arrested at Mar-a-Lago with a shotgun and a gas can. And then in between reports on that, he gave this brief minute 40-second report on the Supreme Court decision.
Now, before this breaking news, Shannon, President Trump said he was irked about the 2 Supreme Court justices he appointed who ruled against his tariff program.
I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth? The 2 of them.
Justices Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett receiving special attention from the president, who said he was surprised by their decision to join 4 other justices in striking down his use of tariffs under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, or IEEPA, from 1977. Writing the majority opinion, Chief Justice Roberts said the law doesn't mention the word tariffs. Normally in lockstep with Roberts, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, writing in dissent, disagreed with the majority's reading of the statute. Quote, I would conclude that the president's power under IEEPA to regulate importation encompasses tariffs. The president's top advisors say tariffs will continue to be levied using different authorities.
President Trump told us from the beginning that we had to have a backup plan and a backup plan for the backup plan in case the Supreme Court ruled against his first try.
Nothing has changed, but what has changed, the Supreme Court has taken away the president's leverage.
Since returning to the White House, President Trump has used tariffs to negotiate new trade deals with other countries, bringing in an estimated $175 billion.
If the tariffs are illegal, then the money must be returned.
Trump says that issue will likely be tied up in court for years.
Wouldn't you think they would have put one sentence in there saying that keep the money or don't keep the money, right?
Also not receiving money right now, the 3rd largest government agency, the Department of Homeland Security.
And then he goes on to a new topic. But yeah, that was the brief coverage, even less than ABC, about this big decision. It kind of played up the value of tariffs. It had sort of like the Trumpian view of tariffs in the Fox News Sunday news summary there, at least in my opinion. You can let me know what you think. And I saw Super Noob 17. Thank you for that Super Chat contribution. I haven't gotten one of those in a long time. It makes it more likely that I'll keep doing these if people react supportively with views, comments, super chat contributions, all that stuff. So thanks for that. The next 2 news summaries are both under a minute. In fact, Face the Nation didn't even have a news summary. They just went straight to the U.S. Trade Representative. So instead of a news summary, I'm going to show their teaser news summary. That's like with the music behind it, is it a teaser? Is it a cold open? I don't know what you call that little part of the Sunday show right before they say, good morning, here I am, and now we're going to start. But here's the part on the Supreme Court from Face the Nation yesterday.
I'm Margaret Brennan in Washington, and this week on Face the Nation, in a major blow to the president's economic agenda, the Supreme Court strikes down his use of an emergency law to impose tariffs on foreign goods. Despite the defeat, the president digs in, announcing a new 15% global tariff to replace the measures struck down by the court, and lashed out at the justices who struck it down.
I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution. I think it's an embarrassment to their families.
We'll get the latest from U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Jamieson Greer. And what's the impact on the global economy? We'll ask the president of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde. Meanwhile, tensions remain.
So yeah, once again, that was the only introductory summary of what happened at the Supreme Court from Face the Nation. They say that CBS is becoming more pro-Trump after the takeover. Barry Weiss has become head of CBS News, and there's been a lot of tumult at 60 Minutes. And I think I've seen a shift in Face the Nation. You know, during the 13 months I've been gone, I've still watched all of the Sunday shows every Sunday because I've been doing that for 40 years or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely a shift at CBS, and I think you can kind of see in that news summary that they framed the whole Supreme Court issue as hurting Trump's economic agenda and the economic consequences, and almost again made it seem like the Supreme Court had done something to hurt, you know, the American economy, which what it's really about is Trump's overreach. Trump's like no president has ever tried to like start and stop tariffs of, you know, unlimited size, unlimited duration. I mean, no president has ever tried to do that. No one has ever used IEPA, the statute, to try to do that. And I mean, that's part of what I think the Supreme Court was doing, was checking the executive, but also I think it was checking government power. It has more to do with Republican values than, you know, the members of the Supreme Court may have been disloyal to Trump, but they were loyal to their Republican values, their Federalist Society values. Because remember, the Supreme Court justice that Trump appointed were like part of this whole like farm team, not to be loyal to Trump, but to be loyal to these like right-wing, semi-libertarian principles that they are still, I think, being true to. The, you know, Leonard Leo and the Federal Society picked them all out and made the list for that purpose. And I think that's one of the things that the analysis is missing in these news summaries, that the, you know, Project 2025 Trump or right-wing project to take over the American government and make it less democratic and more amenable to business interests. That's really what these Supreme Court justices are staying true to when Trump loses this case. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to rein him in on some things that are much more harmful to our democracy than Trump having the power to put tariffs at will on other nations. I guess I'm getting some of my analysis in the middle of the news summaries here, but I have one more to show you. CNN's State of the Union. Dana Bash did a brief under 1 minute news summary that I will talk about a little more after we watch it together over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the State of our Union is wondering who gets the $134 billion. President Trump is not pleased, to say the least, after suffering his biggest defeat yet at the Supreme Court. A 6-3 majority, including 2 conservative justices appointed by President Trump, ruled Friday that he violated the law by unilaterally implementing sweeping tariffs on foreign goods without congressional approval. Even after his rebuke by the justices, whom he attacked as, quote, fools and lapdogs, disloyal to our Constitution, the president is forging ahead with new tariffs, announcing a 10% levy on all foreign goods, which he bumped up to 15% yesterday, with a vow for more to follow. I want to get straight to the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
And I will have a clip from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent coming up from CNN's State of the Union. That's in a few more clips, but I want to talk a little more about the spin that I saw from the corporate media about Trump losing and the Supreme Court reining in Trump, and this is like a huge signal that Trump is going to be more limited in the powers he can wield based on this decision, which I think is way over interpretation of this. But the most comical spin I saw on that was from Fox News Sunday, of course. Fox News bias. You know, Fox News is not really a news organization. It's a propaganda outlet for the Republican Party, as you can see described over in, this book over here, The Loudest Voice in the Room. It's kind of cut off. I have to like reframe my video here, but Roger Ailes created Fox News to be a propaganda outlet for the Republican Party. And so you can see here, they're trying to like get the most play out, you know, because there are going to be more bad decisions coming out of the Supreme Court. That's what I'm going to talk about at the end of the video here, especially on voting rights that like basically take away our multiracial democracy. And so Fox News is part of that whole Republican project of taking away the ability of well, currently people who are in the political minority to have a voice in our politics. And so what they're going to try to do with this one Trump Supreme Court loss is spin it into the Supreme Court is neutral. They're great now, right? You got to agree with that. And so that's the spin. Shannon Bream, she had on first someone from the Trump administration and didn't really talk about the Trump overreach on tariffs and really just the economic consequences. How is this going to hurt our economy? Kind of like Face the Nation. And then when she had Hakeem Jeffries on, she used this talking point that, see, the Supreme Court is a neutral arbiter of the law, is not in the pocket of Donald Trump, even though, of course, Donald Trump, in response to this decision, said that the Supreme Court was under foreign influence and that they were corrupt. But anyway, that's not the Fox News spin. And Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, did not push back very well. But I think I've already pre-criticized the clip more than I should have, and I'll talk about it a little more after we watch that sort of comical spin from Fox News Sunday yesterday over here.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about the Supreme Court case because you celebrated it on Friday, as many Democrats did. You have been very critical of the Supreme Court, has had many Democrats calling them corrupt, saying they're in the pocket of President Trump, saying they need to be term limited, the court needs to be expanded. After the decision on Friday, which included a couple of the president's own nominees voting against him and the arguments he was making, are Democrats now prepared to say that the court is neutral, it's independent, and you'll stop talk of packing or term limiting the court?
I've strongly disagreed with Supreme Court decisions in the past and will continue to do so. However, the Supreme Court in this instance did the right thing. In terms of packing the court, that's not a discussion that we've engaged in. As Democrats, listen, we've made clear to the American people. Well, we've made clear, and I've certainly made clear, that we're focused on trying to do three things at this moment. Lower the high cost of living, fix our broken healthcare system. We can begin by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits so that tens of millions of hardworking American taxpayers don't experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles throughout the year. And of course, we also need to get ICE under control and deliver immigration enforcement in this country that's fair, that's just, that's humane, so that taxpayer dollars aren't being used to actually kill American citizens like Renee Nicole Good or Alex
so
Brady.
let's unpack some of that. First of all, about the ACA subsidies.
And you see, first of all, Shannon Bream has to interrupt when he starts talking about Renee Good and Alex Preddy, the American citizens shot using what looked like excessive force by ICE officers in Minneapolis. And then she starts pushing back on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. She seems to have forgotten her original question, but I don't know. Hakeem Jeffries kind of pivoted away from the question without really talking about the loss of reproductive rights for women and the many other cases and the immunity that the Supreme Court gave Trump during Biden's term that stopped him from being prosecuted for the January 6th insurrection activities, that the whole Jack Smith prosecution and how it had to go away. That anyway, there are a lot of ways that the Supreme Court has been supportive of Donald Trump, and this one ruling, which, like I said, is a 3-3-3 ruling and has more to do with how the Republican justices were, like I said, farmed to uphold some Republican values, including Republicans have traditionally been anti-tariff, pro-free trade, and anti-government regulation. And that's what IEPA allows, is the executive branch to regulate foreign trade. That's the actual words of it. So, yeah, that whole spin by Fox News Sunday is kind of ridiculous. I thought there was sort of in the other direction, the liberal overreach on over-exaggerating the importance of this decision in terms of the Supreme Court reining in Trump power and Trump's move towards authoritarianism, which has been ongoing for the last 13 months since I stopped doing live streams. Well, that I think is overblown in this discussion between Mary Bruce of ABC and Sarah Isgur of SCOTUS blog on his discussion panel on This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Martha Raddatz starts it off over here.
Mary, the president, you just heard the trade rep there, but the president was clearly fuming about this. He does not have enough tools, the same tools that he had before. Why was he surprised about this, given what he said?
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a rare rebuke by the court. The president isn't used to losing, and he certainly doesn't like it. And we saw that in the briefing room. I mean, the president was furious. He railed against the justices in very personal terms. I mean, he called them fools and lapdogs without evidence. He accused them of being swayed by foreign interference. And look, this is a president who expects loyalty from the court and certainly from his appointees. And he now is having to come to terms with the reality and the limits of his presidential power in a way that, he certainly isn't accustomed to. And it will certainly be interesting on Tuesday night when he comes face to face with those limits, when he's facing the justices, although he did say he doesn't care if they show up or not.
And Sarah, from a legal standpoint, and listening to oral arguments back in November, this really shouldn't have been a shock.
No, this is the most consequential case on presidential power that we've probably had in decades, but it also is in line with what they've said before. Presidents trying to use vague emergency powers delegated by Congress simply are going to lose at the court. Biden, student loan debt forgiveness, Trump trying to send the National Guard to Chicago, and now tariffs. The court saying Congress needs to get in the game. Presidents cannot do the job of Congress by themselves.
And Elizabeth, my takeaway from what the trade representative just said is those refunds aren't coming until there's a court order.
And they spent so much time on the refunds. What's going to happen with the refunds of the tariffs on the Sunday shows? And you see Martha Raddatz pivoted to that there, and way too little amount of time as to what this means in terms of whether the Supreme Court is going to be a check at all on the lurch towards authoritarianism going on in our country right now. And I'm not so sure it is going to be. But one of the clearest signals of at least one justice who might be willing to push back on Trump a little more than he has been in the past is the basis of a question in this next clip from Dana Bash to the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, where she asked him about Justice Neil Gorsuch's concurrence, where he talks he kind of implies that Trump is acting like a king with these tariffs and that that's really Congress's power. And you can see Scott Bessent disagreeing, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
I just want to kind of take a step back on this and really look at what one of the justices who voted against the president's authority here, Neil Gorsuch, who of course the president nominated, he wrote in a concurring opinion, quote, "Americans fought the revolution in no small part because they believed that only their elected representatives, not the king, not even Parliament, possessed authority to tax them. The framers gave Congress alone access to the pockets of the people." So you're talking about different sections of the law, but what the Supreme Court said is that it is not the executive's function to do these tariffs. It needs to go through Congress, that is what the Constitution says.
Again, Dana, that's not correct. What the Supreme Court said is that the president cannot use the IEPA, the Emergency Economic Powers Act, to do this. The president does have other authorities, and as I said, the Section 232 tariffs and the Section 301 tariffs have withstood more than 4,000 lawsuits. So it was very narrow, and it's very interesting that the Supreme Court said that the president can't raise $1 of revenue with tariffs, but he can't put on a full embargo. So they reaffirmed his ability to block all trade. He just cannot accept $1 for the trade. And I will tell you, like the tariff revenues, they have come into the Treasury. The ultimate goal of tariffs is rebalancing trade and bringing our trade deficits into balance. We've seen the goods sector, the deficit with our trading partners drop by 17%. We've seen our bilateral deficit with China drop substantially. And we are seeing trillions of investment and factories coming back to the U.S. because of the tariffs.
I take your point that the Supreme Court ruling was narrow on what's called IEPA, but these concurrent opinions were written it looked like, to send a message about the balance of power and the limits on executive authority when it comes to tariffs and taxing. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Coming up.
I kind of like what Dan Abash did there with saving the toughest question. Saving the toughest question for Secretary Bessent for the end of the interview, and then using the fact that she was ending the interview to get the last word. That's kind of a good technique for fact-checking Trump administration officials, I think. And that was like some of the closest I got in any of the 4 Sunday news analysis shows yesterday to an analysis of how the Supreme Court is or is not reining in Trump's power. But even there, it had to do with the executive power versus the power of Congress. And like I was saying earlier, I think what Justice Gorsuch, the principle he may be upholding, isn't limiting the executive power, but limiting the power of government to regulate trade, because it's a lot harder to get it through the Congress. And so if you say that Congress has to explicitly authorize the power to create these tariffs or to authorize the tariffs, then what you're saying is that it's going to be very difficult to regulate businesses using tariffs, which, you know, if you believe in free trade, that's a good thing. But that's what Republicans traditionally have believed in, is free trade, no tariffs, laissez-faire, leave businesses alone. And so I'm thinking more that the loyalty that we're seeing from Gorsuch is to those federalist principles and not so much a disloyalty to Donald Trump. And when it's important for the continued dominance of Republicans, I believe Neil Gorsuch and any of the other 6 right-wing justices will be willing to uphold that. And I'll get to that a little more after I show the final newsmaker clip here, where Margaret Brennan, who I criticized earlier, faced the nation for moving more towards the right since Barry Weiss took over. She actually does ask a question that I wish everyone from the Trump administration had been asked on the Sunday shows about this really wild claim Trump made at his news conference that the Supreme Court is under foreign influence, like Chinese influence. It's hard to understand exactly what he was trying to say, but Margaret Brennan asks the U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador, now I'm blanking on his name. That's the first time. Ambassador Jamieson Greer here about that, and also uses that little trick, as you'll see, where she makes it her last question, so she gets the last word in my last newsmaker clip today over here.
The Supreme Court ruling, that vote was 6-3. The president, as you know, you were there, came out publicly, and he railed against some of those justices by name. He said this on Friday. Take a listen.
They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution. It's my opinion that the court has been swayed by foreign interests and a political movement that is far smaller than people would ever think.
That's a pretty huge allegation. What foreign interest has corrupted the court, according to the president?
Well, I won't characterize his words too much. He speaks for himself. What I will say is that
Do you know what he's talking about?
So many of the interests that were at issue in this case were really about foreign importers or foreign companies that have interests here in the U.S. who are suing the president and suing the administration. It's foreign companies that are benefiting from the tariffs being struck down. This is why when we impose tariffs, foreign countries don't like it, and foreign companies don't like it because they're the ones that don't want to have the tariffs in place. They're the ones that are suing. They're the ones that are trying to get together coalitions and groups to oppose what the president is doing. The president's fighting for American workers. He's trying to impose a trade policy that has a through line through the first Trump administration, Biden and Trump with tariffs, but it's foreign countries and companies that are suing that want these things to go away.
They are suing, but the president wasn't talking about them. The president was talking about the Supreme Court justices, who he said are unpatriotic and disloyal and swayed by foreign interests. Do you have any evidence to back up that allegation about the Supreme Court justices who, as you know, face security threats on a daily basis?
So when the foreign interests sue, they appear before the courts. They're literally arguing before the courts that they should have a different outcome. So they are. It's quite obvious that foreign interests are involved. They're helping bring lawsuits. They're arguing before the court, these justices, 6 of them, agree with what a lot of these foreign interests want, which is take down the tariffs, take down the barriers, and let us import as much cheap crap as we want to the United States at the expense of American workers.
But do you need to clarify or feel compelled in any way to clarify in regard to the allegations against the justices themselves?
I'm not speaking for the president. What I'm telling you is that when the president talks about foreign influences, at a minimum, what we see is that foreign companies are involved in the coalitions, the PR effort, they're involved in the cases, and they don't want these tariffs. It's not a secret. I mean, for months, these foreign countries and companies and people in the United States who benefit from their commercial relationships with them, they want these tariffs to be gone. That should be the signal for us that we're doing the right thing, that we're over the target. When the foreign countries and companies are literally arguing in court through their advocates to take it down, we know they have influence.
Well, 1,500 businesses, including Costco, have filed lawsuits to get repaid for these tariffs. But we will leave it there. Jamieson Greer, thank you for your time this morning.
So yeah, Margaret Brennan got the last word, but it was about American businesses, not about Trump's wild claims that had no evidence. And I don't think Jamieson Greer there, was Jamieson Greer in the Clear and Present Danger? Wasn't in those Tom Clancy books? Wasn't Jamieson Greer like the head of the CIA or what? I can't remember it. Anyway, that's why I was having problems with the name. Like, am I remembering the character from a Tom Clancy novel? No, but maybe, was it Jamieson Greer or something close to that? But anyway, I think Margaret Brennan didn't really push back hard enough on his kind of nonsense explanation. Well, because, there were foreign companies who wanted to get their money back. That's why he's accusing the Supreme Court of being corrupted by foreign influences. The key word there is corruption, and she did not really emphasize the corruption part. And it's kind of strange because Democrats have been making these arguments about the Supreme Court being corrupt for many years, when it turned out that they had no ethics rules that they had to follow because they just policed themselves, and they've been taking all these trips and what was it? Clarence Thomas had his adopted son or whatever get tuition from Leonard Leo and his big Federalist Society donors. And that's kind of leads into what I was talking about before, that I think the news analysis programs did not really bring out that first, that it was not a 6-3 decision against Donald Trump. It was a 3-3-3 decision with the 3 conservative justices having a different rationale than the the 3 liberal justices. And then, of course, Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh were they apparently are just loyal to Trump, or at least because this was such an easy decision, honestly, that Congress has this power. That may be one of the reasons that it's a 6-3 decision. The 3+3 came together. But like I said, I think it has to do with their loyalty to these conservative Republican principles that they were farmed and created through the Federalist Society to be anti-tariff, and that it's not just loyalty to Trump. And there are some really nasty decisions coming up. The biggest, most nastiest decision that I think you're going to see all of these Republican justices come together to destroy our multiracial democracy is Louisiana versus Callais, which has to do with the Voting Rights Act, whether Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act allows racial gerrymandering. I put a link down in the video description to this Fair Fight Action report titled "What Happens in the South Doesn't Stay in the South, Louisiana versus Callais, the Supreme Court case that could enable Republicans to rig Congress." There's been all this redistricting, gerrymandering to try to increase the seats before the midterm elections. Well, one thing that report points out is that if these southern legislatures can redistrict to take away almost all the Democratic seats in the southern states, then using racial gerrymandering, then they could take another 19 seats 19 seats. And that's what's really important. That if you really want to check Trump's power, what you have to have is elections that Republicans lose because people in a democratic way don't like what Trump is doing. He's very unpopular, and it's had some effect on his policies and some effect on Congress. And I'm worried that that is only like a dead reflex from when we used to have free and fair elections, because Trump is doing all sorts of things with ICE and otherwise that, and ballot boxes in Georgia and things that look like he's trying to rig the 2026 midterms. And then if you add in the Supreme Court with this Louisiana versus Callais decision coming up, will likely allow southern states to add 19 additional Republican seats. Now, I think it's going to be kind of a wave, assuming it's a free and fair election. Democrats should still be able to do more than those, maybe even 40 seats. They could, if there's a big wave, maybe even the Senate. That's one of the reasons I came back to do my live stream, is I kind of wanted to cover the midterms. But before I get to that, I also want to show you one other thing about this whole idea of getting rid of racial gerrymandering to basically take away the ability of minorities to have any political voice at all. There's a Yale Law Journal article I was looking at that's kind of interesting. I put a link to it down in the video description. The Callais Confusion, Power Sharing, and the Inevitability of Proportional Representation. And what that is about is that if you take away Section 2, what you're going to do is you're going to make it impossible for people who don't have 51% of the population to have any political voice at all. That's one of the things Section 2 has allowed, is for minorities to have majority-minority districts. And maybe this is a way that Republicans hope that they can have perpetual power, that they can gerrymander themselves out of having to be accountable to the voters. They can just make sure that they split the voters up in a way that they always hold political power. But it could actually come back to bite Republicans in a really bad way, given that we're 10, 15 years away from white people not being the majority in the United States. And while that won't be true in a lot of states for a lot longer, as time goes on, it could be, the white Republicans who are going to be looking at, don't want to be racial gerrymandered out of power, because they're going to be the minority who won't have any more political representation. But anyway, none of those issues were covered by the Sunday morning news analysis shows, and I just wanted to add all that in for your consideration. Like I said, I want to see if we really have a free and fair election for the midterms, and Trump loses, Republicans lose, so that there's some accountability for the unpopularity of their policies. If that happens, maybe our democracy can be salvaged. If somehow there's no longer any accountability at the voting box or from voters for policies that are unpopular, well, then I don't think you're going to see the Republicans and the administration respond to opinion polls as much anymore, because why should they have to? They're never going to have to face a free and fair electorate anymore. And I don't know which way it's going to go. There are signs in both directions that there are signs that people are rising up and there's going to be a surge wave election against Trump. All the elections, off-year elections have been kind of showing that. But there's also these threats, both from Louisiana versus Callais, to racial gerrymander almost 20 more seats for Republicans. And then whatever Trump's going to be trying to do with the SAVE Act and voter ID. The Republican SAVE Act, they say it's voter ID, but you can't use a driver's license. It has to be a passport or a birth certificate, which a lot of people don't have. And anyway, now I'm just going off into a rant on various issues that I haven't had a chance to talk about for 13 months, but I am planning on doing this Monday Media Mix-Up, at least for the next couple Mondays after this. I saw I had over 20 viewers at one point, and this is just a random Monday morning that no one was expecting, so maybe it'll grow a little from there, and I'll see how well the recorded version of the live stream does. I may upload it separately. I haven't decided yet. Depends on how long it takes to process. But if people seem to react positively to it, I'll maybe come back through the midterms. The only thing I won't do is commit to doing every single Monday, because I will definitely need to take some Mondays off between now and the November midterms. But if everything goes well, I wouldn't mind doing a quick one on Monday mornings, kind of like this one was quicker. Well, of course, there was no Meet the Press, so 20% less clips. But anyway, I'm going to finish up now, but I did promise a bonus Cheech and Chong the Kittens clip for the Cheech and Chong the Kittens fans out there. And I have one I took a couple days ago where Cheech does this thing where he bites Chong on the back of the neck, and sometimes it's disturbing. It looks like it hurts. I don't know if it does or not, but I kind of caught it on video the other day, although it seemed like once Cheech saw he was on video, he like switched from the bite on the back of the neck to licking, as you'll see over here. So there they are, still happy and cute. I hope you enjoyed the time and effort I put into putting together these clips along with my political commentary and media criticism. I hope you'll come back next Monday. I'm going to try to do it in the mornings. Monday morning, next Monday morning, I'll be back with more clips and commentary. Until then, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.